All right, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to our update for our deep point of view challenge. Yes, this is our final session before the big finale next week. So I'm here to button things up, explain how you can submit your final story for judging, what we are looking for, and some tips and tricks when it comes to deep point of view as you finish up your stories. Some of you may have already realized that submissions are in fact open at this point, so you can submit at any time if you know how to do it. If you don't worry. I am going to let you know. So, the Deep Point of View Challenge. Yes, hopefully you have signed up already. We do have prizes for signing up. We also have prizes for the winners, but just signing up does make you eligible. And we'll be doing those grab bag prizes next week. Lots of great things to give away. Will be a lot of fun. What is deep point of view? Well, if you're just joining us and you do not know what a deep point of view is, you might want to go back to the last few episodes because we've been talking about it the last couple of weeks. But deep point of view is really where we are immersing ourselves in a viewpoint character. We are experiencing their point of view in a deep way. In other words, we are trying to see the world specifically from their perspective without a lot of interference from anything else. And for the purposes of this challenge, I really am asking you to try to get deep, get quite into the character's mind and really explore that. Try not to include any information that they wouldn't know about, wouldn't think about, things like that. There's going to be a little bit of subjectivity of that, and I'm going to allow for it, but that is something, that is ultimately what this challenge is about. That is the task. All right. Yes, you only know what your viewpoint character knows, right? If your character, the protagonist of this story, wouldn't know this, it should not be in your narrative. It should not be in your prose. Ultimately, we're only writing a 1,000 word story, so it shouldn't be that hard. This, of course, is much harder to maintain over a 50, 60, 70,000 plus word book, which is why a lot of authors do tend to uh, paint outside the lines a little bit. They tend to compromise in some ways. But for the sake of this challenge, really true, try to be buttoned up and stick to the script. Ultimately, the rules of the challenge are your work cannot be over 1,000 words. I know that makes it on the shorter side. That can be a challenge in of itself. But the reason why we do that is so that we can read a bunch of finalists. We try to read somewhere between 8 and 10. It depends on the length of the pieces in the final session. And it gives a lot of opportunity for people to be read publicly. And it gives more opportunity for the audience to decide the ultimate winner. So we like to have more in participation. So that's one of the reasons. The other reason is that, well, we're trying to make something that's very attainable, very easy to pull off, is not going to be a difficult thing to throw into your work schedule. We're not here to try to distract you from your major project. We are here to encourage you and get you motivated to work on additional projects. And the nice thing about our projects is you have a chance of getting a public reading, perhaps some prizes, things like that. Nice little incentives to keep you writing. The deadline, March 24th. That is this Sunday at 11:59 p.m. Eastern. So you got lots of time. Submissions are open now. I'll show you how to submit in a minute, but submissions are open now. So you have no excuse not to make it between now and Sunday. So do try to avoid waiting until the last minute. Sometimes there's a technical problem or you just forget or things like that. And that makes it very awkward because a lot of people spend effort to enter these things. And even though these are for fun, we do try to uh, take it seriously, right? In a uh, in a seriously in a fun sort of way. But you know what I mean? Like we're not flippant about this. We do know that people take care in their art. We want it to be as good. We want to have finalists that are as quality as possible. And the last thing we would want is for somebody to kind of sneak in the back door with some last minute effort or who knows what. Now we want to keep it equitable for as many people as possible. But the last minute is the most exciting minute. It may be, but unlike in fiction, our countdown clock doesn't freeze at 1 minute or 1 second to the end, like it always does, like Galaxy Quest, right? It always stops at 1 second. No, no, no. It will, in fact, close, and therefore you might miss out. So I do not recommend that. Can I talk about keeping everything in the right tense? Yes, I can show you. We actually have some tools to help you with that if it's something you struggle with in the writing desk. When it comes to tense, reading it out loud can be a big help as well. All right. Your writing prompt, just to reiterate, this is what we need to see within your story. We gave you a lot of wiggle room here, but I did want to give a specific guideline, so I just wasn't like, write anything. There's a little bit of a challenge involved. It is a challenge after all. So, and we did tell you you could take it in an abstract way. You did not have to take this in the most direct, obvious way possible. In fact, we recommended perhaps you didn't do that. So what we want you to do is to write from the perspective of a thief. What are they stealing? It's up to you. Maybe they're stealing your heart. Oh, I don't know. It needs to be something is being taken, right? It does not have to be tangible. It just needs to be something being taken. I have a question. Are we supposed to show the thief in the act of stealing? Can it be them making the decision to steal or reflecting on their heist? Something like that. Let me think about it. I do not think that the prompt specifically stated they had to be in the act of stealing, because I think it says that they feel morally justified in what they are taking, which could imply that they are in the middle of it, but I'm not going to say that that's an absolute necessity. They just feel morally justified in what they are going to be taking or are taking. I will say that generally it is a good rule of thumb when it comes to fiction to write about things that are happening in real time versus recollections or pontifications about them, just because real time action is the most interesting. However, I'm not going to tell you not to write what you're suggesting because maybe you have a really good hook or something like that. But I'm just saying in general, it would be better to, if you're going to make it about the thing that they're stealing or the fact they are stealing, showing them the stealing versus talking about I just stole something and wasn't it great kind of thing. It also is easier to write in a deep point of view when you're talking about what is happening right there that moment than recalling the past, right? 'Cause when you're recalling the past, what will happen is that I'm in deep point of view about the way you're thinking now about the past. But that means when you're thinking about the past, the moments happening in the past do not feel like they're in a deep point of view. They feel like they are being narrated by yourself in the present. Do you see the difference? Right? Because I could say, I could put you into the situation of it is. Do you have to write in present tense? No, 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 because you can write past tense, but with the framework that what you're describing is what the character knows that moment. So I can say, I was standing in line, looking around. I couldn't find them, and then they appeared, or something like that, right? Whereas if I talk about it from the future, I could say, I was standing in line. I would find them later, but they hadn't shown up yet, right? Which is knowledge that I didn't know then. And so even though it's me, and you could say, well, it's you, so it's okay. It follows the rules. I would say, no, not really, because that is me being my own narrator, talking about the past with the knowledge of the future, interjecting into the past, not me relaying the story in a real time way. Now, again, that doesn't mean that I can't tell that kind of story in past tense. The point is, what kind of information is being shared or expressed? How is it being spoken about? Is it being spoken about? Yes, knowledge, right? Is it being spoken about as if the thing has already happened and I'm pontificating about it, or am I just talking about something that happened in the past but relaying it to you as it occurred at the time? Should it be a complete story, beginning, middle, and end? Something has to happen. Yes, I really recommend that, right? I'm not saying it's impossible for you to make the final without that, but it's unlikely because if I have a choice of 8 quality or 8 or 10 quality works and they have a beginning, middle, and end, I'm going to go with those because that's generally what audiences are looking for. Yes, as long as it's consistent, you can submit in present or past or future? I don't think so, but I don't know how you would do that. But I guess you would say, I will do this and I will do that and I will do the other thing, but you don't really know that. So I don't, anyway, I'm being a little bit silly. I also don't think that second person would be the smartest way of handling it either, because that's a deep point of view of me and that would be very creepy. But hey, if you want, it's 1,000 words, so you can experiment a little bit more as well. Yeah, so somebody's saying first or third. Yes, first or third is fine. Second, probably not the best for this challenge. It's pretty underutilized. The thief feels morally justified in what they are taking. And yes, the third free OV should be third person limited, first person should be consistent. Yeah, don't switch between them. Don't be like, it's in first person, and then all of a sudden I start talking in the third person and things like that. But the thief feels morally justified in what they are taking. Does that mean that you, the author, feel they are morally justified in what they're taking? No. You don't have to. You could. Maybe you're making the point, right? There are many reasons why you might take something that somebody thinks belongs to themselves because maybe it doesn't actually belong to them, right? Maybe you are taking back something that is owed to you. Maybe you have made some machinations in your mind that are the reason why you think you're morally justified. Whatever it is, the character feels they are morally justified. Whether or not they are, you can leave the audience you can either let the audience decide or you can make it clear to the audience that you don't agree with the point of view character with the way that you write it. When you write a character who is trying to make a lot of excuses for themselves, they can come across as a clear, unreliable narrator. I'm not supposed to take them all that seriously. Can the thief explain why they're doing? Yes, they can. If they are going to do that, though, keep in mind it should be what they are thinking about. So you may want to trigger it. So, for example, imagine they are taking money from somebody that they feel robbed them. Maybe they did. Maybe they are a crook. They are a bad business person, and so they need to take money from them to get revenge, right? And they feel morally justified in that. Well, it could be that as they walk up to the person, they're driving their fancy car and they're like, yeah, that fancy car, another sign of why I'm going to do what I'm going to do. Yeah, that makes sense because that would be in their mind at the time. If it wouldn't be, then you might end up with a heavy-handed kind of narrator dump where they're like, "The reason why I'm doing this, audience, is this," and that might not feel very realistic or very deep point of view, right? Again, we're trying to get into the mindset of the character when they were doing the action. And what they're doing, again, you might think about what you are doing, if it's meticulous, if it's planned out, if you have to make adjustments. I was going to do this, but since they're doing this, I can't. You might be thinking about that, right? But otherwise, you might not. And so again, you want to be careful about how heavy-handed you are relaying information that the character would not be thinking about. What if I want it more than the other guy wants it? Well, that might be morally justified in that person. All right, so people are asking how to enter the story online. I was just about to get to that. Yep, so I'm at the deep point of view tip. So I'm going to pivot now and show you how you will be submitting online. The way you will be submitting online is through the writer's desk. The writer's desk is the heart of AutoCrit. It is where you can edit and polish and perfect your work. So let me go ahead and bring that up here. So hold on here. Let me go into this file. So if this was your file, okay, you would be going up to the upper right hand side. I'm going to highlight it with my mouse. And you're going to go to save. It's the old 3.5 floppy disk because we love nostalgia around here at Autocrit. Yay! Um, old tech, right? Retro. All right, so we're going to go to save, and then we're going to go to submissions. You see that? You see save, save as version, submissions. Submissions is the bottom. And then all you have to do is hit this little check mark. Here, let me move myself. I'll become a real talking head for a second. Boop, boop, boop. Check mark. Yes. And you'll notice here you have a little countdown clock of when it's going to run out. So keep that in mind. If you hit that check mark, you're good. But it only means you're good. That's it. That's your submission. So whatever text appears in this box is going to be there. You'll notice there's a little word count at the top, 199. Yeah, that's a good way for you to see if your work is long enough or not. So, or too long, if it's over 1,000 words, try to trim it back. You can do it. I believe in you. There are usually words you can remove. So that is the way to submit. Pretty simple there. Just wanted to see if there's any questions about that. All right, so let's look at some tips while we are considering our submissions. We have a few more days. You can go ahead and submit, but you may want to take a glance over at some of these things. I've already mentioned this, but situational importance. You do not want to have characters thinking about things that would not be important during that time. So if you need me to know that they have a nephew, that they are the third in the line of an whatever, an heiress to a fortune of a perfume heiress or something like that. If you want to if you want that information in the story, it needs to be relevant to what they would be thinking about at the time. So again, think of triggers. Think of things that would trigger your own memory or your own reason to think about things and include that in the scene so that it doesn't come across like it's just out of the blue. They're thinking about stuff for no reason at all. You also want to think about the fact that if you're doing a tense scene and they're like sneaking up and then they're like grabbing something, that they're probably not going to spend a lot of time considering all of the details. So imagine, they sneak up to the treasure chest and they notice it's made of a rich mahogany wood that has grains very similar to my old grandfather's coffee table. The one that I always loved to play on until the one day that I scraped myself against it. Like, you're not going to go off on that kind of rabbit trail unless that is something specific to the character. Now, maybe it is, and that's a fun character voice, but otherwise, no, it's going to feel like the author is just intruding with all of these things that the character wouldn't consider at that moment. You want to stay right there in the pocket of the drama as it unfolds. Sensory language is going to be your friend. This is a way to dramatize what is going on. What is that character feeling? What are they smelling? What are they hearing? What are they seeing? What are they touching? Right? Instead of using a lot of pronouns and first names, instead jump me into it. So don't be like, Shirley walked into the room. She saw on the table was a vase of flowers. Stepping over, she touched the flowers and noticed they were very delicate. No, no, no. Just like jump to it. Be like, Shirley walked into the room. On the table was a vase of flowers. It was very delicate under her fingertips. Like, we don't need all of that information because they're not thinking about those things. They're not thinking in that kind of distant way, right? And if we can see it, that means they're seeing it. So it'd be the same thing if you wrote it in first person. If you wrote it, I walked into the room. I saw on the table was a vase of flowers. I walked over and I touched it and it was very delicate. No, no, no. You would just do, I walked into the room. On the table was a vase of flowers, things like that. right? Avoid was. Well, yes, in general, do try to avoid was and do active verbs as well. But I'm getting specifically to try not to use that kind of filtery, I did this, I did that, she did this, she did this. Instead, jump to the describing it as it's going on because now we're in their head. We have moved as soon as we have a sense of who we're talking about, we can jump to the things that are happening. We don't have to constantly reframe it and explain who it is that is doing the thing. If we're constantly reframing it as who's doing the thing, it kind of distances us. It makes it feel like we're pulling out to a helicopter shot. Now, one question that comes up a lot with deep point of view is how to describe yourself, considering you don't usually think about yourself. Well, that makes sense. Now, the tried and true explanation that people often go to or a solution is a mirror. And because of that, that's very cliche. It's not recommended. It's kind of the easy out. And to be honest, even with mirrors, how often are we really checking ourselves out in the mirror anyway? Maybe to a certain extent, but not nearly as much as characters in books seem to do so. So there are other things you can do that are a little bit more subtle and effective. So you can compare yourself to a person or an object. So, in other words, you can think, oh, that person's much taller than me. Well, that gives me a sense that they're shorter, or at least they're shorter than that person. That person has much longer hair than I do, things like that. Or objects. This tie really brings out the color of my eyes. This dress manages to give curves to my very stilted frame or something like that. This is a way that people can describe themselves and it makes sense because this would be a time when we are thinking about our personal appearance. What you're really trying to avoid is for no reason whatsoever, except we want the audience to know something about their appearance, that the character starts talking about their appearance because that feels very contrived and not natural. That's like what you do for a personal ad. That's not what you do when you're telling a story, right? Again, and I would argue too for a 1,000 word piece, appearance is probably not something that should come up too much. You really want to think about what really matters to telling the drama on the page, which might involve something like their stature, their height, how people are perceiving them, but not much else. And it just may not really be all that relevant. But it depends on the story, of course. The other way you can do it is through actions. Did they have to reach to get to the top shelf? That tells you that they're not super tall. Did they have to duck to get into the car? That tells you they're a little bit on the taller side. Do they have trouble fitting into something? That lets you know that they're a little bit bigger, etc. Actions are a great way of showing a character description without a character having to awkwardly think about it. Again, and also it's coming up, so it doesn't feel contrived because it's like, oh, you're telling me this because it's mattering. The fact that they have to stand on their tippy toes in order to reach something is important to the story. It's not just you made them short for reasons. No, no, no. It's actually part of the plot, so that doesn't feel nearly as exposition-y and things like that. All right, so those are some tips for you. But actually, before I do want to talk about the Heroes and Villains Workshop in a minute. But before I get to that, I wanted to show you some examples. So these are very extreme examples because I like extreme examples, but I'm going to demonstrate why you really want to consider point of view in comparison to heavy-handed narration, and how heavy-handed narration can really bog down your writing. So I have this extreme example that I put together here. So you can it is not good. That's the point. But here we go. That's the this we're gonna play a little show and tell here. All right. In the deep, shadow cloaked alleyways of the city, where the light of destiny rarely deigns to tread, there was a thief, a mere silhouette against the backdrop of fate's intricate tapestry. This thief, cloaked in the arrogance of the unseen and buoyed by the whispers of avarice, dared to challenge the immutable laws of consequence and causality. Unbeknownst to this purveyor of petty pilfering, the very fabric of the universe seemed to conspire against the success of his endeavor, as his fingers, nimble as they were with the greed that fueled them, reached for the object of his desire, a trinket so mundane yet so crucial in the grand scheme yet to unfold. unfold, the threads of fate were already weaving a tale of downfall and redemption far beyond the narrow alleyway. In a place far removed, where decisions of great import were being made, the consequences of his action were already setting into motion events that would lead to his inevitable capture. The object, seemingly inconsequential, was, in fact, a linchpin in a series of events that would see him transformed from petty thief to pawn in the great chessboard of cosmic justice. Little did he know, as he secured his prize, that his fate was sealed not by the act of theft itself, but by the unseen eyes of destiny that watched, unblinking, ready to mete out the lessons that only the future could unveil. Brilliant, right? Um, you wouldn't have read you wouldn't have read past the first sentence. Yes, a good example of a thesaurus. Trying to read prose like this makes your eyes twitch. But yeah, immediately, like when it's so grandiose like this, you can just see. But this is extreme, right? But this is the problem with this is not only is this well overwritten, but we just feel like it's some grandiose poobah, like floating in the ether or something, that is really trying to uh, show off or something, right? Like it's not accessible. It feels so beyond whatever. So, what would be another way that perhaps this could be spoken about? We could do the same kind of thing and we could take a deep point of view. Now, this isn't going to win awards, but this is just to demonstrate the difference. Okay. I slip into the alleyway, shadows folding around me like a familiar cloak. The thrill pulses through my veins, a silent drumbeat urging me forward. It's just a trinket, I tell myself. Or is it? The air hums around me as my fingers, trained in the art of taking what isn't mine, reach out. The moment the object touches my skin, a shiver runs down my spine, not from the chill of the night, but something deeper, more foreboding. I pause, suddenly aware of the silence that blankets the city around me. It's as if the world is holding its breath, waiting. For a heartbeat, I consider the weight of what I'm doing, the unseen consequences of the seemingly small act. But the thought is fleeting, drowned out by the rush of the moment, the need to possess what I've claimed. As I pocket the trinket, a sense of unease settles over me, an unshakable feeling that tonight's choice might lead me down a path from which there's no return. The city's heartbeat resumed, echoing my own, a rhythm of fate and choices intertwined, leading me forward into the unknown. Now, this is still really heavy handed, in my opinion. I'm not saying this is great. This is really heavy handed about the foreshadowing, and it's really on the nose. But you can see immediately that just changing the style from this omniscient, little do they know, unbeknownst, all of this, to I'm in the moment, I'm feeling the sensory detail, I'm with the character. It's a whole lot better, right? Again, we would want to keep going through. We'd want to kind of strip this down. This is still over the top, but this is, in my opinion, a huge improvement over the other. This is fairly readable. That first example, it's some people are like, yeah, you would barely be able to get through it. Right. This, I would say you probably could. And this is much closer to what we're looking for. So again, this is the reason why I'm emphasizing a deep point of view. It can make up for a lot. It is a immersive way of telling a story, and it can be extremely helpful. All right. Oh yes, yes, yes. Somebody's like pacing seems slow. Feel free. Yes, 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 yes. There's still things to criticize. I was just merely pointing out that even with some of the same problems, that switching to a deep point of view made it a lot better. That was my goal in that little exercise. Not to write a a fantastic example through and through. I'm showing you how just that pivot can help a lot. Heroes Villains Workshop. We all know that characters are incredibly important to our writing, and the Heroes Villains Workshop is going to be a lot of fun where we're going to go through what makes a solid hero, what makes a solid villain, what makes a solid protagonist, what makes a solid antagonist. Now, keep that in mind. I'm not only going to be talking about evil, evil, evil villains. I'll be talking about traditional villains, yes, but I'm also going to be speaking about antagonists in general. characters that are in the way of the character and what they want. And in terms of heroes, yes, I will be talking about the classic hero, the force of good, but I also will be talking about anti-heroes as well. So feel free to join me for that. Two sessions, one for hero, one for villains, 90 minutes each, exercises, and yeah, it's going to be a whole lot of fun. The other one I want to point out is Beyond Reality. Yes, we are going to have a sci fi course where you can learn the secrets of stellar sci fi storytelling, and that's going to begin on April 4th. Speaking of sci fi, we have the Sci-Fi Fantasy Club. Tonight, we're going to have a session at 7 p.m. Eastern. I get a little bit confused because I also have a fantasy class. And tonight, it's really an open call. So we're going to have a story doctor session. So that really means that you can come, even if you don't write fantasy or sci-fi, and you can ask me questions. It's just open mic night, as it were. Open QA, open line Friday or whatever. Open line Tuesday, and you can come in and you can ask me anything you would like about storytelling or a specific project. All's open, and that's for anybody who is an AutoCrit member. People are asking about feedback. We unfortunately do not have time to give personal feedback to everybody for the sake of the story. However, stay tuned on that front because we will have a way to get some feedback. I'll mention that on the next live session. Okay. And then the accountability club is going to be every week with Catherine. Does a great job motivating you for the week at 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. Eastern on Mondays. Again, this is open to all AutoCrit Pro members. I also wanted to point out, I kind of skipped past it. Tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern, Gareth will be doing live critiques of openings. So again, great way to get some professional feedback, all included in your AutoCrit Pro membership. All right. Well, stay tuned to this channel. Like, subscribe, hit the bell. Don't forget to submit your entries. I want to read every single one of them. I don't want anybody to be missed. We'll see you back here again on Tuesday for the grand finale where we read the finalists and we get to find out all of these wonderful deep point of view thieves. I'm very curious to see what everybody is going to be stealing and how they justify it. It's going to be a lot of fun. And we're going to have a lot of great programming coming for you in April as well. So definitely stay tuned to this channel. Lots of great tips and tricks and ways to encourage you as a writer. That's ultimately what we're about. We're about trying to make this year for you the best year it could possibly be for your writing career, whatever your aspirations may be. Thanks again for joining me. It's only because of all of you I could do what I love, which is talk about writing. And I will see you all next week or anytime sooner if you're in the AutoCrit community. Bye, everybody. You have